Time we seem to have a new outbreak of some kind of nasty disease coming into farm animals.
We do, or at least that's the way the government would have it. If you are a human, though, don't switch off now, because this does definitely concern you. This is the government announcing that Bluetongue is going to be a risk for this year. It's amazing forecasting by them. But they've suggested that due to some identification via tests, that this is what's going to be making a serious impact now. Of course, the BBC are fanning the flames with news that midges are being blown into the UK. So I think the inconsistent science is the theme running through this. The BBC reporting that a new strain of the animal disease could have a devastating impact. They talk about infected midges being blown over from Northern Europe. 126 cases. However, they're very clear that the virus does not affect people or food safety. Now, I'll come back to that because I believe that is not true, even if for a slightly separate reason. And they critically, they say that farmers are calling for a vaccine. They go on to say that in the Netherlands, a vaccine was given emergency approval just last week and that the government is actively engaging on this. Now, interesting to note that it was only in February here, according to the Farmer's Guide, that farmers were relieved as Bluetongue spread was now highly unlikely. So what's not been considered at all are the environmental conditions, which is often the case when the government attempting to determine a particular illness via testing. They take no regard for the environment. And of course, the consistently wet conditions over the winter are not just outstanding conditions for midges to hatch, breed and circulate in, but also more likely to be depleting the nutrient supply of animals that have probably been kept indoors far longer than they would normally have been on feed that they wouldn't normally be eating at this time of year. So to leap to the conclusion that midges are causing this or have anything to do with it is quite staggering. Nonetheless, we'll have a look at a quick video now to see what the government are saying about this.
AFA's role in controlling Bluetongue is that we have the responsibility for controlling animal disease in Great Britain. It's our job to detect cases as they come through, so farmers and vets will report suspicion of disease to us. We'll then go out and look at those animals. We'll take the samples, send them to Pirbright. They are the lead laboratory for Bluetongue.
So the Pirbright Institute has a wide range of expertise, ranging from not only the laboratory testing aspect, but also around modelling of disease outbreaks, culicoidal surveillance, and really supporting disease control. So they're now really preparing ourselves for an outbreak later this year, spread by the culicoides midge, and is able to infect all known ruminant species, including cattle, sheep, goats and camelids.
It's important to know that it only takes one infectious bite from a midge in order to infect an animal.
Classic clinical signs of Bluetongue in sheep are edema of the face, fever, hemorrhage of the coronary bands. They'll be lethargic, may not want to get up to feed.
We've also worked with Pirbright on the modelling of the disease. What's the most likely scenarios, what's the least likely scenarios, and then also with the Met Office as well, to look at when is it likely that midges would be blown over from the continent, and we have a regular programme of assessing the risk of infected midges being blown into the UK.
The problem is that a lot of people will receive what they've just heard there as absolute fact, and I would put it a different way. You will have noticed the many references to modelling and testing and midges being blown onto the continent, from the continent, for which there is scant, if any, evidence. Nonetheless, they are determined, of course, that there will be an effect on the animal population, and I would wager it'd only be a matter of time before the inference is drawn that humans are also at risk. But we'll just look at the financial background, because this is always where these things become a bit more clear. And the Sustainable Farming Initiative, which we've looked at a lot this year, it talks about the annual health and welfare review. In essence, they are sponsoring farmers to have visits from vets. They say at the moment that this will not be used for inspections or compliance, but I wonder how long that will be the case, and that the vet will help you make sure your use of veterinary medicines and vaccines is appropriate, by which they mean that all animals must be vaccinated against absolutely everything all the time. So they're delivering these priorities by using public funds to pay for health and welfare enhancements that are valued by the public. Of course, the public are being told exactly what they should be valuing in the first place, and that they will therefore be purchasing food that aligns with their values. Now, this animal health and welfare pathway financially rewards farmers who deliver public goods, or at least that's the way they put it. So what do they mean by this? Well, we've got items and specifications under the Equipment and Technology Fund, and it doesn't take much searching to find that one such item is an automatic vaccination gun for livestock, which will be, you will be granted half the cost of that, and indeed a vaccine refrigerator with an external monitor. Critically, there underlined is the score, and you can increase your application score by 20% if you provide evidence that you've discussed your application with a vet. So it's very hard to see how any objectivity is really going to be retained throughout this process, as everybody chases the medicines and the money at the same time, because of course they both point in the same direction. Now, this comes from further back, which is the GB Bluetongue virus disease control strategy going back to 2014, in which there is a passage on vaccination. But specifically, what I want to point out is that it refers to the use of approved inactivated vaccines, and it talks about voluntary or compulsory vaccination under a specific or general license. So this is beginning to ring a fair few bells. The vaccine in question, the one that was referred to in the Netherlands, is here listed by the European Medicines Agency as the Syvazul BTV. And going back to the part about it being relevant for humans, what I want to draw your attention to is this passage here. First of all, the inherent arrogance of the allopathic medical system, which says that it teaches the immune system, which is the body's natural defenses, which seems to be a bizarre thing to want to do in the first place. But at the bottom there, the vaccine also contains adjuvants, aluminium hydroxide and saponin, that enhance the response of the immune system. So just bear that in mind whilst we look at the next bit, which is the withdrawal period from in food-producing animals. So this is the period before which an animal may be slaughtered for the meat being used for human consumption. And here, the withdrawal period for this drug with those adjuvants for sheep and cattle treated with this vaccine is 0 days, which means that there is no mandatory waiting time. It means that if you're eating food from a supermarket, there is absolutely no doubt that you are going to be eating these vaccines an awful lot besides. And it just goes to show how the system is being completely manufactured in order to follow Mike's segment. There is a complete reliance on these drugs and the money that's going both ways in the same system.
Charles, the theme here is, I think, from the beginning of the program, is we're starting to see the same types of policy cropping up in various different areas, whether it be viral pandemic like COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, antimicrobial resistance. But you're talking about farm animals. We've got to remember that the same type of modelling and the same type of policy was rolled out during the foot and mouth crisis. And we had the whole issue of slaughtered on suspicion at that time, where a test was given or a test result came back the wrong way. Farms found their entire herds being culled. So first of all, what are the symptoms of this? What are the implications for the animals? But I mean, do you also see any hints of a slaughtered on suspicion policy sitting in the background here somewhere?
First of all, on the slaughtered on suspicion, I'm not sure that I have seen anything that refers specifically to that. I think one of the reasons for that is that there's more money in not slaughtering on suspicion, or at least more money for the people that are able to exert more influence, and therefore the push towards medication is a more likely outcome. But as I say, because we're having this relentless push for what are being referred to as zoonotic pathogens, the idea, the sort of fear that if our biosecurity is not sufficient, then these things will go from animals to humans. And of course, as anyone who's ever been to the west coast of Scotland in the summer knows, midges do like biting humans too. So it's not going to be too long before the suggestion, perhaps, that we're vulnerable to this as well. The symptoms, again, with all of these supposedly insect-borne illnesses, they are very non-specific. Bluetongue is the only really sort of, I mean, not actually that it necessarily needs to be blue, but the sort of lethargy and general symptoms are in a way similar to the nondescript symptoms that malaria or dengue fever or any of these other things have attached to them. So as I said at the beginning, the science behind this is terrifically inconsistent and, of course, laboratory-driven and very, very closed-loop thinking.
Yes, okay. Thank you. We'll keep an eye on this as we go. Okay, let's move then to Vladimir Putin, because he has now been inaugurated earlier in the week for his 5th term as president of Russia. And it was quite the event. Now, the interesting thing here is that the list of countries that sent any kind of representation from the West was pretty small. So France, Hungary, Slovakia, Malta, Cyprus, and Greece sent representation, but everybody else decided that they didn't want to be involved in it at all. What fascinated me was the BBC's response to this in particular, because they and in fact, mainstream media as a general rule was really going with the ad hominem attacks here, of course. But Putinism is a thing, according to the BBC, and they were quoting a guy from the Carnegie Eurasia Russia Center saying, "We have one more ism in our history, Stalinism." I would say that Putinism is one more incarnation of Stalinism. He behaves like Stalin. His power is personalized, like in Stalin's time. He prefers to use a lot of political repressions, and like Stalin, he's ready to keep himself in power until the physical end. And then they attempted to demonstrate the sort of totalitarian. In fact, they were very clear in saying that this was not authoritarianism; it was totalitarianism that we were seeing here. And they attempted to demonstrate this by choosing one town in Russia that happens to have a mural on a wall of Putin. They may have been more successful with this argument if Putin murals had been in every single wall in every single town in the country. But anyway, nonetheless, this was the effort. Vanessa, it's really pretty childish, isn't it? Sorry, try again. We didn't hear you. Are you muted at your end? Okay, we have a problem then, because you're definitely not coming across here. So I think you need to try to reconnect. We will come back to this story in a minute. Let's see if we can do some quick editing and move forward through the.
I'm back.
Well done.
Oh, okay. I don't know what happened.
Anyway,
one of those days.